Good afternoon, everybody. I just want to start off with a little bit of review um, so we can go over a few things before we continue on. Some of the stuff will be from the previous chapter. Some of the stuff will be things that we've previously talked about. Some of the stuff is going to be things that we haven't talked about and we probably should have. So the first thing we're going to talk about here are limiting factors and carrying capacity. Right? So when we're looking at limiting factors, all right, so these are anything that limit the size of a population. Okay, so for instance, if I have a population of rabbits living in a particular area of the forest, there are certain things that are going to prevent their population from growing too big in size. Um, for instance, if they run out of food, okay, so if they run out of food, what's going to happen to some of them? They're going to starve. They're going to die off. They're not going to be able to reproduce. Okay. Predators are in the area. Those ones are going to be hunted and killed and eaten and will not live longer to reproduce. And space to live. All right. In a habitat, every individual in that habitat needs a place to live. It needs a source of protection from the environment, protection from predators, things of that nature. There's only so much space in an area. Okay, when you run out of space, things are going to start to die off. All right, these are all limiting factors. So a particular habitat can only support so many members of a particular species. And if for some reason that starts going way too high, then you see kind of nature start to figure things out. Well, if there's this many rabbits, then also you're going to start to see the amount of food they eat, right, the plants that they eat, start to dwindle down because they're being eaten at a much greater rate. So now food starts dropping off. Some of the rabbits are going to start to starve and population starts to go down. As the rabbit population goes down, the amount of plants can go back up and the rabbit population can start to increase again. So you end up seeing this fluctuation going on, right? So how these limiting factors limit the population, whether predators are eating them or they're running out of food or places to live, and you see this up and down kind of swing. So a population can grow to a certain point, and then it's just too much to support, and it starts to drop back down. And then things start to even out again. Resources start to become more available. Population goes back up, it reaches to a certain point, and it's too much again, and it drops back down. So kind of that nice average of the highs and lows would be the carrying capacity. So that is basically the average amount of that particular species that the environment can support. All right, so another thing I would like to go over real fast is the food chain and the difference between a food chain and a food web. Okay, so if you remember from chapter 13, we talked a little bit about the energy pyramids and how as you go up the food chain here, so starting down at the bottom with our producers, our autotrophs, okay, and we move up every time there is a decrease in energy, right? So for instance, something that eats a snake will receive less energy, or there'll be less energy available than for something that eats grass. Okay, grass is the first one removed from the major source of energy, which is the sun. Okay, and we have our different steps. We have our producers and our autotrophs, which are the same thing, right? Okay, so automatic feeding. Okay, that's how I like to remember it. They get their energy directly from the sun. Those are then eaten by the primary consumers. Primary, the first thing to eat. Okay, so the first thing to consume. Producers do not consume. They automatically make their food, right, through, for instance, an example of that would be photosynthesis. There's also different types of chemosynthesis, right? There's different ways in which you can make a food source, right, other than sunlight. Okay, but sunlight is a major one that is talked about, and it's probably the easiest to understand based on what we've already learned. Okay, so we have photosynthesis going on here. First one to eat in this food chain is going to be the beetle. Now, everything that eats is called either a consumer or a heterotroph, right? So if we're looking at first ones to eat, primary meaning one. Secondary, second one in line. Tertiary, third one in line. Quaternary, fourth one in line. So the beetle, the primary consumer, is going to eat producers. The secondary consumer will be eating a primary consumer. Okay. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that, for instance, if we look at the tertiary consumer, the snake eats the frog, but it could also eat a beetle. A hawk could eat a snake, or it could eat a frog. But you're going to see it going kind of back down this food chain, down towards the bottom. Okay. So it eats the ones before. It doesn't necessarily eat all the ones before, but definitely at least the one right before it. Okay. So the beetle goes into the frog's mouth. The frog goes into the snake's mouth. The snake goes into the hawk's mouth. That's how I remember the direction of the arrow. The arrow points to whose mouth it's going into. All right. So the snake is going into the hawk. The frog is going into the snake. And a quick little thing here. So that was an example of a food chain. Here is an example of a food web. All right, so a food web can have more than one food chain in it. Now we start off with that original food chain that we had in the previous slide: grass to beetle to frog to snake to hawk. Okay, but it could take different directions. It could go grass to beetle, and then beetle to lizard, lizard to snake, snake to hawk. Okay, I'm actually going to go back and do that in a different color. Or, pick a different color. We could go that way and call it a day. In this scenario, nothing is going to be eating the horse. Or we could go grass, beetle, rat, snake, hawk. Or, let me find a different color here. So many colors. Grass, beetle, rat, hawk. Okay, so in this instance, I mean, I'm not sure if I've gone over every single one, but we have at least 1, 2, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different food chains within this one food web. Okay, and over here I've given you a list of different types of heterotrophs and a simple definition to go along with each. Why don't you go ahead and pause this video when I'm done talking, and make sure that you have these down in your notes somewhere, or that you at least understand what each of them mean. Remember, there is sometimes a big problem between a lot of these. People get, for instance, parasites and predation, like we talked about in the last video. So predation would be, for instance, carnivores and omnivores. All right, they're going to omnivores, definitely carnivores, hunting something and eating them. Parasites do not hunt. They feed off of and live off of the host that they are in. Scavengers, all right, things that eat things that were already dead. They were found dead, all right? They're not the hunters, all right? So the carnivore eats, hunts, eats, and then scavengers pick up the scraps. Okay. If you have any more questions about these, let me know. All right, give this a pause and make sure you got it. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately my online book is not working right now, but I'm currently on chapter 14.5 and page, let me double check here, page 445. Okay, for some reason that one page won't load, so I'm going to use this review that I have here, and I have all these reviews up on my teacher webpage. So if you want to go there and go to reviews, I have reviews for every single topic that we'll be discussing. So if you need some extra help, I suggest going there. If you can't get a hold of me, or I'm not getting back to you fast enough, and you can read up a little bit there, and maybe that can help you. All right. So on page 445, they talk about ecological succession, all right, or succession of an environment. So if we're looking here, it says the environment may be altered in substantial ways through the activities of humans. All right. So for instance, any activities that might alter an environment. When we're talking about succession, and if you look here at this diagram here, we're starting off with basically nothing, all right? Very little things. So these types of activities, or natural disasters or climate changes, are going to wipe out the environment, all right? They're going to wipe out the land. Most major plants are going to be destroyed. Whether it's a volcanic eruption, burning everything down, forest fires, slash and burn agriculture. If you're not sure what that is, that's when you cut down a lot of trees in a certain area, and then you actually burn the area down to get rid of all the stumps and everything like that, and you use that for farming. Unfortunately, that kills and ruins the soil after about one year of crops, and you have to then move on to a different area. The soil is then going to take time to replenish itself, which is not good for the environment, needless to say. The plants usually are not replanted. The trees that would then also take a long time to regrow. So when we're talking about succession, we're talking about something has caused a complete disaster, right? A complete wipeout of that area.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, so basically my microphone cut out on me, so I'm going to have to go through all of this and just voiceover, so my voice will not match the video. Sorry about that. I have no idea why, but for the last third of this video, no audio recorded, so here we go. All right, so basically in ecological succession, what I was talking about here, as you go from one to the other, you're going to see plant growth becoming more and more complex. Now, in the primary succession, we're starting basically anew. Like if we have a melted glacier, all right, that means there was no ecosystem established there with complex plant life once before. We're starting from scratch, okay? So we start with these really, really basic plants, okay? We're starting with like lichens and grass and other things, and over time, those are going to wear down the rock and then increase the soil layer, okay? Which will then make room or make way for a more nutrient-rich soil layer for the next, all right, types of plants. So right here I'm showing you mosses, lichens, grass. All right, so those are going to be the ones that are kind of heading the way for more complex plant life. Okay. Then in the next step, once that layer of soil has become thicker and more nutrient-rich, because the lichens and the mosses have worn down the rock, they've died off. They've increased the soil layer. Now there's more nutrients and a soil layer for more complex organisms like shrubs, the cottonwoods, smaller plants, medium-sized plants, to actually put their roots in and able to establish themselves. So providing them with the nutrients they need and the anchorage to the ground in order to support their growth. Okay? And now as those grow and those die, they're also going to increase that nutrient-rich soil layer, which will then bring us into the third transition, okay, when we start getting into a little more of a complex forest, all right? So right here I'm still talking about, bigger plants growing in the second layer, than what was in the first layer. Excuse me if this is a little off. I'm trying to remember exactly what I said, and I'm probably saying it a lot faster now than I did before. So let's just take a look here. All right, so now I'm on to the third transition, moving into the fourth. All right, so we've made way for more complex plants. We see the forest of elder and spruce trees, further increasing the soil layer. Those are going to have leaves and things that die and fall to the ground. Smaller plants are also going to die and fall to the ground, increase the nutrient-rich soil layer, which will then just make it more available for even more complex trees like the hemlock, spruce forest, for their roots to anchor in to give them the nutrients they need. Now, moving on to secondary succession. Okay, so secondary succession is basically the regrowth of this environment. So there was an established community there before with plants, right? Let's say there was a massive flood or a forest fire, which killed almost all of the plant life there, okay? Some of it is going to still be there, right? They are going to start to regrow, right? We have to rebuild this nutrient-rich layer again, just kind of like in primary succession, except at one point in secondary succession, it was there, and now it's gone. So now we're rebuilding, okay? So we're making way for more complex grasses and shrubs, and then the soil layer increases, bigger trees, and then eventually we get this oak hickory forest with this really huge soil layer full of nutrients that are able to support those more complex trees. Okay, so once again, primary succession. Okay, we're looking at, this is the first time the ecosystem has been established here. Okay, we're starting from scratch. All right, there was no nice nutrient soil layer to start with. All right, we're breaking down the rocks. These small little plants are going to grow and die, and that's going to contribute to the soil layer and make way for more complex plants, which then will make way for even more complex plants. And every time we move up, we're increasing the thickness of that soil layer, providing more nutrient and structural support for larger plant life. Okay? Going back to, oh, I'm still talking about primary succession here. Sorry. All right, moving back to secondary succession. All right, we already had something established there, but it got wiped out. So we're rebuilding. Okay, rebuilding once again. Rebuilding that soil layer, rebuilding that nutrient-rich layer to support more complex life. Okay, just make sure you're getting your questions done for 14.5. Type those into the Word document. Submit that Word document underneath the video, and then I'll check it out. If you need to fix anything, I'll let you know. And when you're done with that assignment, you will then move on to Moby Max. Okay, on Moby Max, your assignment is going to be changing populations and ecosystems. Okay, so video, take notes, do your 14.5 assessment. Make sure you submit that in the comments section under this video, and then get to your Moby Max lesson and get that completed. Okay, I am not quite sure what I'm still talking about, but I just want to let you know that I really miss you guys. I hope everybody is well. I know everyone's doing great, and can't wait to hear from you again. Please, questions, comments, give me a call, whatever you got to do. All right, my video is done, but please, I look forward to hearing you, and I hope everybody is well, and hope you take care and have a fantastic week. All right.